this is kind of a theme which comes up time and time again. I've been working with software engineers now for quite some time, and a lot of people tell me that they struggle speaking up and finding the confidence to do their presentations, their meetings, their demos, particularly in English. But this session, we're going to focus a bit more on the soft skills side of things as well. So just a little introduction before we start. So just a bit about who I am. So my name is Tom Horner, and I'm an English communication and soft skills coach for software engineers. So I've been working with software engineers now for about 10 months. Prior to that, I was a business English teacher. And then before that, I had a career in sales. So I do know a little bit about soft skills and communication. And in those 10 months since I've been working with software engineers, I've really began to understand why soft skills are so important. And it's a really important skill to have in the industry, especially if you want to progress into management and leadership roles. So that's why I thought, webinar on soft skills today would be a very, very good idea. And I think a lot of people, as I said, they do find it, particularly challenging speaking up in stand-ups, presentations and meetings. So I want to give you some strategies in today's webinar to kind of help you overcome, that side of things. So I've created an agenda for the webinar today. So these are the things that I'm going to talk through. To start with, we'll look at the importance of soft skills in software engineering, and then we'll talk about how we can actually overcome your fears. First of all, what your fears might be, and some coping strategies, things that I suggest that can really help. We'll then look at actually some specific situations that you might find yourself in the workplace. Okay, so these would be things like maybe giving feedback, making suggestions in stand-ups, how to share a different opinion. And then we'll also look a little bit at presentations, and then I'll finally give you some final tips for success. And of course, if anyone has, any comments that you'd like to make throughout, just use the chat box at any point, and I can check that regularly. Just to see if there are any questions. So so let's look at actually, a little bit more about soft skills. Let's kind of dive in. So I thought I'd start with a statistic, which is actually quite striking, I think. And it's that 92% of recruitment and selection managers stated the soft skills are just as important, if not more, than hard skills or technical skills. So, this is really strong evidence suggesting that, hiring managers, recruiters, employers, they really, really want strong soft skills in software engineers. And that's why it's really important to level up your English communication, but also, other soft skills as well, empathy, teamwork, these sort of things that we're going to focus on a little bit later in the presentation. So what exactly are soft skills? Okay, so soft skills, essentially, they involve common sense, the ability to deal with people and adopt a positive and flexible attitude. So in the workplace, they are very, very important. Not least important for software engineers, because you will have to complete a behavioral interview in order to actually land the job. So the interviewer is going to assess you in this behavioral interview, how well you can work in a team, how well you can communicate with your colleagues, okay? But the difficulty is that soft skills can be very, very difficult to measure. So unlike hard skills like your coding and your programming skills, where we can kind of quantify them, soft skills, it's very different. So, that can make it a little bit vague sometimes, so we need to keep that in mind. But I will emphasize again, soft skills are very, very important. So let's look a little bit now at the typical soft skills that you would be expected to have. These are the top soft skills in software engineering. So you may have the hard skills, like the programming, the coding, but if we look at these, obviously communication skills, software engineers, you need to be able to communicate the code to stakeholders, non-technical people within the company. This is also in writing as well as speaking. Okay, so we need to have strong communication skills. Also, being a software engineer is all about working as part of a team. Okay, so software engineers, they need to be able to compromise, motivate others, and also learn how to take criticism as well. Problem solving. So, at the end of the day, essentially, software engineers are paid to solve problems for businesses, for clients and users. So, it's very, very important that soft skill, the problems that, software engineers need to be creative problem solvers. Again, this involves working within teams, asking questions, using your communication skills. Attention to detail. So software engineers are expected to be precise, meticulous, and have a high level of attention to detail applied to everything from coding to testing to documenting projects. So before those were the top 4 sort of soft skills that I recognized, but then as I say, I've had many conversations with software engineers over the last few months, and then 5, 6, and 7 became more and more obvious. These kept cropping up as well. So leadership skills, as I mentioned before, if you want to become a manager or a mentor, you want to mentor junior developers, you need to have strong leadership skills so you can mentor junior developers. And you need to have resilience as well to be a good software engineer, because let's be honest, learning to code, it takes time. It's very difficult, and you need to have a lot of patience. You need consistent practice as well, and this requires resilience, to carry on, to not give up. And finally, adaptability, I would say, is a strong soft skill. Why? Because programming languages, they're constantly changing. We need to keep upskilling our skills, our programming languages, frameworks change. And that's why being adaptable is really key to being a good developer. So these 7, I think, are very, very important soft skills. Of course, if you think of some others, feel free to add them to the chat box and I'll take a look. But these are the 7 that I wanted to focus on today. Okay, and these are 5 key soft skills, further soft skills that will help you level up your development career. So I mentioned before about asking questions. Very, very important. You can't be expected to know everything when you're solving complex coding. So you need to ask questions to the team. Adopting a growth mindset. What do I mean by this? Well, this is about constantly striving and improving and wanting to learn. So software engineering is one of those industries where you never stop learning. So adopting a growth mindset, wanting to learn, actively seeking, asking questions, this is important. Showing empathy as well. We need to be able to show empathy with our colleagues. We're working in teams. We need to be able to support each other as well. Very, very important. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, you need to have consistent practice. So spending just 30 minutes each day on your coding, this can, you'll see really, really good results if you take small but consistent steps with your practice. And also just embracing the unknowns as well. This is very important. Again, this comes back to adopting a growth mindset. So, you know, you will be a great software engineer once you can adopt this growth mindset and commit to learning new things all of the time. So let's move on to a little bit about the fear maybe of speaking up, you know, that lack of confidence that you might have in your stand-ups, your kickoff meetings, your maybe even your interviews. Well, first of all, if you do have these worries about speaking up, then you're not alone. So, you know, I used to dread meetings. I'm not going to lie. You know, when I worked at corporate companies, I didn't particularly look forward to them. You know, so you know, I totally understand. But you know, actually having a few nerves and a little bit of fear is totally normal. You know, that's the thing. But it's important to understand how we can overcome these fears, because if we let the fears get the better of us, imposter syndrome will seep in, and this is when the fear can prevent us from speaking up, from making contributions at work. So we need to. This is why preparation is so key from the start. You know, we need to prepare well, and that's what we're going to look at a bit today. So my suggestion, my advice is just to break it down and take one small step at a time. Okay, going too fast or doing something too quickly can sometimes backfire. Okay, so I really like this this phrase: "Failing to prepare is preparing to fail." So you know, if you do have your interviews, if you do have your stand-up meetings, knowing what you want to say beforehand will give you more confidence in what you want to say, preparing things. If you have a presentation, are you practicing the presentation first? Are you filming and recording yourself? You know, because, you know, the anxiety, it will probably never go, okay, but preparing to overcome it as best you can is a really good step to take. Is a really strong step to take. So yeah, as I mentioned before, you know, don't feel bad if you do have this fear. It's completely normal. So how can this look in practice, this preparation? Well, I also recommend maybe creating an action plan. So a great way to deal with fear is creating an action plan consisting of small steps. Okay, if we make consistent practice over time and we break it down, this is how we improve. So first of all, structure your points by writing them down. You know, be it for the stand up, for the presentation, the meeting. I'm a big fan of bullet points. This will structure what you want to say and give it some order. Then practice what you want to say, you know, alone or with someone. And you can record this on your phone or film it and watch or listen to it back. And then you can actually refine or make changes to the delivery. Okay, but you know, something that I do a lot with my students, my software engineers, is we do a lot of role plays in my program. So this is practicing your presentations, practicing your meetings, because you know, this practice, it will give you far more confidence in your communication skills when you practice. You can't be expected just to go into this without any preparation. So that's why having an action plan is very important. But as well as an action plan, learn the phrases that you need in these situations. We call this functional language. Essential phrases that you can use. Fixed expressions which never change, which is really great, because once you've learnt these expressions, you know them forever. Yeah. So, and again, why is functional language so important? It will make you more confident in your communication. So, you know, when you come round to your presentations, your meetings, what have you, you're going to be more and more confident. And actually, the more functional language you know, the more real life situations you're going to be able to communicate in. For example, introducing yourself to colleagues, clarifying information, giving advice, feedback. This is something we have to do all the time as software engineers, give feedback on projects. Maybe if you're a manager or an aspiring manager, maybe you need to conduct a meeting. We'll go through that shortly about the best way to conduct the meeting. And sometimes naturally we will agree and disagree in our projects as well. So how can we best do that? We're going to look at some of these situations in just a minute. So, as I said, the functional language, I'm a big believer in it. It makes you more confident, will make you sound more natural. And as I say, once you actually know these phrases, you'll be able to use them again and again and again. So, simply introducing yourself. I think, we don't need to focus on this one too long, but the key here is just keeping it short and simple. You don't really need to say more than 2 sentences here. Just introduce yourself, your position, and maybe also the branch, the actual location of where you work. When it's your time to actually speak, though, in a stand-up, for example, what I suggest you do is you have 3 points and you have a clear beginning, middle, and end to what you want to say. Again, this will give you structure to what you want to say, and it will make you sound more confident. So, for example, hello everyone. As the tech lead or as the engineering manager, for example, I have 3 suggestions for the project. And then what you do is you actually mark the 3 points with the first, second, and third as you discuss them. This is quite a clever way of keeping things nice and tidy, and again, keeping things very organized. And then at the end, you can actually sum up your 3 points with a benefit or an advantage to give credibility to what you want to say. So, for example, here, you might want to say, by implementing these 3 strategies, we can build stronger relationships with the product team and improve workflow. So this is what I suggest you do when you want to speak up and talk about contributions or progress on a project. But it's important as well to transition between these points. You don't want to just say it all so quickly that people can't understand what you're saying. Transition statements, they allow us to, refine what we want to say and just give everything structure and order. So use these phrases to transition between your points. Moving on to my next point. Now we've discussed the first item or point or topic. Let's now move on to my second point. Or, now we come to the question of, and maybe this final one, now we come to the question of, you might be backtracking and referencing something that you spoke about at the start of the meeting. Okay, so transition statements, remember to use them in your meetings. They're very important. As to is closing an item as well. So when you've taken care of your first point, make people know that, okay, and that brings it to the end of my first point. I think that takes care of my first point. Why don't we now move on to, or if nobody has anything else to add, let's move on. And this is a nice way of closing an agenda, an item. This would probably be more applicable, as I said, when you are maybe going through an agenda, for example, or something like this. Now, as I mentioned, you might be in a position where you are conducting meetings. This could happen, and if so, we need to have some structure and some order about conducting meetings. So what I suggest you do is you have a strong introduction. So you're going to open the meeting, something like, good morning everyone. If we're all here, let's get started. And then you'd probably want to introduce yourself, depending on the context. But hi, I'm Tom, or whoever it is. I'm working in a different branch, but it's very, very nice to be here today. Or you might be actually introducing someone else to the meeting. The next point is where this is where you could then talk about the objective for the meeting. So your 3 points and the benefit. So, we're here today to discuss, or the reason that I've called this meeting, such and such. At the end, once you've spoken about your 3 points, you might then want to finalize the next meeting, but always remember to thank everyone for attending as well. This is very important. So that's this is a clever sort of guide to conducting a meeting. Now, I mentioned before at the start that we were going to look at typical situations that you might find yourself in at work. So ask yourself this question: are you comfortable in these situations? And again, as I said, if you're not and you don't feel like you are, don't worry about it. You're not alone. Many people feel very, very nervous in certain situations. I've spoken to a lot of software engineers that can't express themselves the way they particularly want to. Okay, so yeah, as I said, it's not a problem. But disagreeing politely, giving feedback, making suggestions, interrupting politely, and sharing a different opinion, these are all situations that you will definitely find yourself in at work. So let's have a look at how best we can tackle these. So if you need to disagree politely, there is obviously a suggested way without being rude or causing offense. So clearly, I know this might sound obvious, but of course, try not to interrupt when that person is speaking. Instead, wait for a pause, wait for a moment where you can chip in and say the following, something like, that's an interesting suggestion, but perhaps we should explore other possibilities. Thank you for that, but it's not exactly what we're looking for. And I hear what you're saying, but I'm just not sure it's going to work. So what you can see with these statements is that you're trying to at least acknowledge the speaker's initial points, showing that you've listened. You don't want to come across too direct when you're disagreeing. Okay, as I said, the person at least wants to feel like they've been listened to. But if you have a different point of view, it's absolutely fine to say that in a meeting. Another couple here, thanks for that idea. Perhaps we're going to take a different route with this one. That's a great idea, but I don't think it's suitable for this specific case. So again, some functional language that I really hope would be helpful for you in your upcoming meetings. And, maybe just something you can think about as a takeaway is, can you think of any other phrases that you would use? Maybe you have your own. And if you do, then that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. But as I say, just remember to acknowledge and then build on that suggestion by then suggesting your own. Okay. Giving feedback. So I think a lot of the software engineers I speak to, I think we know that we really like receiving feedback. Okay, so everyone normally likes receiving feedback, but what about giving feedback? This is not so easy sometimes, because we talk about constructive criticism, constructive feedback. Always try and make sure your feedback comes with some advice, some way of improving something. Okay, because otherwise you don't want to hurt someone's confidence. So something like, I see where you're going with this, but if it needs some work, you could say, look, you're great at this, but it does need some work. But this is amazing. So, kind of like a positive, negative here. Have you thought about? have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? That's quite a nice phrase, you know, because it's very soft language again, and it's getting people to kind of think outside the box laterally, which again is very important when we're solving problems. If this is really creative, let's see if we can fine tune your approach. Okay, so this is constructive feedback, and as I mentioned earlier, giving feedback is a very important skill to learn, especially if you want to become a manager. You'll be giving feedback all the time, having one-to-one appraisals, meetings, conducting team meetings. Okay. But of course, also we need to make suggestions during projects. You know, especially if we're adopting like the agile methodology, like a lot of you will be, things change constantly in projects, and we need to make suggestions to pivot the project, you know, based on the client's requirements. So things here, you could say, you know, you could use these phrases: we might want to, we ought to, perhaps we should, I think you might, and in my opinion. These are all phrases that you could just extend with your own suggestions after. And so how to interrupt, essentially it adopts the same sort of principles as how to agree politely as well. But this one is very, you know, I think because we've been working online for the last 2 years or so, this one we need to sometimes interrupt at times, because working online, things can crop up all the time. You know, there could be problems with the internet connection, you know, things that we don't expect. So again, you know, make sure that you wait until that person has stopped speaking, but then you can use these phrases: I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I don't mean to be rude, but may I interrupt quickly? Or sorry to interrupt, but may I ask a quick question? If the conversation has moved on, feel free to actually backtrack to the previous comment that you wanted to talk about. I'd like to backtrack, if possible, to what you said at the start of the session. And just one more as well, just a final situation that you might find yourself in is sharing a different opinion in a meeting. So again, one thing that I hear a lot sometimes with software engineers, a common problem is, you know, they don't want to appear too direct in meetings. They don't want to cause offense, you know. But what do? Do you just sit there and say nothing? No, you should feel confident enough to speak up. So again, my approach is acknowledge first what the other person has said. So you can say something here like, I understand what you're saying. I see where you're coming from. You know, you make a good point there, but I wonder if you've thought about using this approach, or maybe we could look at it this way instead. What you're doing here is you're suggesting your point of view as supplementary rather than alternative. So because you first acknowledged the other person's point of view, they're not going to be so defensive when you suggest yours. This is all about using very soft language. Okay. So sharing a different opinion in a meeting. Just check the chat. No, we haven't got any questions. So let's move on to presentations. Okay. So, you know, just a couple of questions that you can think about to yourselves as you read this. You know, what in your opinion makes a great presentation? I think that there's a few elements that go into it. And we're going to focus on a couple of these in the following slides. Have you watched any presentations recently that made them particularly memorable or enjoyable? You know, what is it? Usually it's about the delivery, isn't it? About how the speaker connects with their audience. How can you connect with your audience rather than just reading a whole bunch of slides and forming no connection with the audience, that's not going to resonate. So we need to come up with a different approach. And one of these approaches is storytelling. Storytelling. Again, I'll hold my hands up. I am not a good storyteller. I do not enjoy telling stories. I'm not a particularly good joke maker either. People that tell good stories, I can usually tell good jokes. Okay, but this is a particularly difficult skill to learn. But actually, you know, we've been telling stories to each other for over 50,000 years. But back before the world of technology first came about, 100 years ago, this is what people did as a form of entertainment. They sat around in circles telling each other stories. But the thing is, even though it is very difficult, with a bit of work, you can become a better storyteller. And this will really, really help connect you with your audience when you reveal more personal information about yourself. But why storytelling? Well, as I mentioned, this helps to show a bit about who you are, and this connects with the other people. So we do have a comment in the chat box, Ogres, and it's I'm mostly creating unique development memes and using them in presentation. Yeah, yeah, memes are really good. They're really, really good. They kind of like create more of a light-hearted approach to your presentation. They break it up, and everyone loves a meme. So that's a really, really nice comment. I like that one. So yeah, really good comment, because you don't want your slides to just be full of information. You know, you're going to lose people's interest. Try and have a few visuals, a few pictures, maybe a video. Break up kind of the pattern of your delivery. So yeah, just going back to kind of what I was talking about with storytelling, is it does help to show a bit about who you are. Okay, so when we make ourselves vulnerable in situations, this is when people can connect with us on a deeper level. So, you know, I'm not suggesting that you have to start telling them about your family and these types of things, but try and show a different side to you if you can in your presentations. But as I mentioned before, you know, it's not a particularly easy skill. Many software engineers have told me that they don't know what to say when they're telling stories. They don't know how to tell it, and they feel unsafe showing vulnerability. Okay, so how can we tell better stories? What is the approach that I suggest? Well, when you're talking and giving a presentation, try to provide sensory details. What I mean by this is use verbs like see, hear, smell, and taste to immerse your audience in the story world. Okay, try and get them to visualize and actually really evoke these emotions. This is the power of storytelling. As I mentioned before, tell a personal story that actually involves you. This will resonate far more with the audience if you talk about a believable story. So what I suggest you do is practice talking about a time when you experienced a challenging moment at work and what you learned from it. Okay, so if we relate this back to maybe your interviews, behavioral interviews, you're likely going to be asked a question which is, tell me about a time when you had a problem or a challenge at work and how you were able to overcome it. So this is actually a question in an interview where you would have to tell a story. Okay, so I would like you, maybe, you know, after this session, practice that question, practice telling that story. Max has put in the chat box, sometimes I saw some presentations that the presenter talks a lot about himself. It's a bad thing, am I right? Yeah, I know what you mean, Max. That's definitely, I definitely know what you mean by that. You don't want to talk about yourself too much. of course. When I mentioned about just telling a personal story, Max, I'm just talking about kind of just showing that vulnerable side to yourself that can connect you with the audience. But actually, my advice is to always make the story or the presentation about the audience. Make them the star of the show. Talk. If it's about the client, what can you do for the client? But yeah, so you make a good point there. Yeah, don't make it all about yourself. People will lose interest equally there. Um, Build up to a star moment. So again, star is very important in interviews. Situation, task, action, results. But we can use this in storytelling as well. So some examples of a star moment include shocking statistics or dramatic images. And a star moment could be maybe a live demonstration, and it will ensure that your audience will remember and be talking about your presentations weeks later. Okay, so build up to that star moment. Okay, give them something that they're going to remember. Let's look a little bit about the delivery. I wanted to give you some points about your delivery when you're giving presentations. Be aware of your body language. Smile and try and relax. Okay, easier said than done, granted, but I think a lot of people, when they feel nervous, instinctively they end up talking too quickly and they don't breathe. So consciously remind yourself, I need to slow down. When you slow down, you actually appear more confident and trustworthy. Believe it or not, actually, I find the trustworthy side of things I find is very interesting. But I think people believe you a lot more. Make eye contact with your audience instead of reading your notes and slides the entire time. Obviously, this is very difficult when we're online, but we need to apply this back into the real world as well. So if you're going to be doing a face-to-face presentation in the near future, try and make eye contact with the audience. Watch for nervous gestures like rocking or tapping as well. This is just going to put you off. Take some time to think about what you say. Okay, very, very important. Make an effort to slow down your pace and include pauses. When I work with my software engineers in our role plays, I always sort of remind them, just slow down by that 20 and 30%. Why? This is going to give you more time to think about what you want to say next. So rather than just rushing what you want to say and making mistakes, if you slow down, it's going to naturally give you more time to think about what you want to say. Speaking slower will also help you to avoid excessive filler words like or ah. This affects our speaking fluency when we use too many of these filler words. So try and stay away from using them. Pay attention to your volume and intonation. So with the volume, if you're speaking in a live room, make sure that the furthest person back in the room can hear what you're saying. Don't talk too quietly because no one's going to be able to understand. Okay. Intonation, this is when our voice goes up and down in a sentence. Try and vary your intonation. Nobody wants to hear a flat presentation. No, we need to inject some excitement and some intonation into what we want to say. And avoid the lecture. Okay. So as we mentioned before, don't make your presentation too data heavy. Try using visuals, memes, ask questions, some funny pictures, or you could maybe even do an activity if you're able to try and do something like this. Again, with the presentation, similar to when you're conducting a meeting, make sure what you say has a clear beginning, middle, and end. Okay. Ask your audience questions. Okay. So this is very important. Make them, involve them. in the presentation. Just checking the chat box as I say that to see if there are any questions. There aren't, but yeah, you know, nobody likes to feel like they're being spoken to all the time. So try and involve the audience and use verbal cues. Okay, so what I mean by this is build up to those exciting moments as well. You can use phrases like, you know, this part is really important coming up, or you're not going to believe what happened next. The next statistic is going to really, really surprise you. Okay, so it's kind of building up to that cliffhanger. Again, use the power of storytelling. Really, really important. So I've just got a couple of slides left now. Okay, so if you do have any final questions that you wanted to raise, feel free to use the chat box. I'll definitely get to them. But 5 development tips that won't be taught in school. Okay, so you know, you might not read about these in your textbooks, but you know, software engineering, it's not just about the technical skills. As I mentioned at the start, soft skills now are hugely important if you want to advance your career. Work on your communication, work on your soft skills. You know, if you feel like you're lacking in this area, get a coach. You know, quite, you know, if I'm being honest, you know, working with a coach will save you a lot of time and you'll achieve results a lot faster. Avoid rushing to finish tasks quickly. So the tendency, you know, sometimes when I speak to software engineers is, you know, they've got approaching deadlines, strict deadlines that they need to meet. So they want to finish very, very quickly. Try and avoid that. With the same with our communication, slow down. This will help. Learning how to learn is essential. So this comes back a little bit to my growth mindset point that I mentioned before. So, you know, be an active learner, be curious. Part of being a software engineer, I think, is about being curious, learning new programming languages, how they work, coding, asking questions in the team, very important. Number 4 is kind of linked again to imposter syndrome, but being perfect, I think, is an illusion. So, you know, perfectionism will only hold you back. It will slow you down. I used to feel like this a little bit, you know, everything had to be perfect. You know, if I wanted to put a video out on LinkedIn, I had to be perfect. No, it doesn't. People aren't really going to be too concerned if you trip up on a word, or you know, if you make a minor mistake, good enough will do. So try and use that perfect kind of mentality. And my 5th point is development isn't just about code. It's about solving problems. And for this, we do need to collaborate. We need to communicate with our colleagues, with our stakeholders, with our clients. We need to understand, you know, and collaborate. And this is very important. So again, all comes back to soft skills and communication as well. And just some final tips for success. Okay, so some of these I've already covered so far in the presentation. So apologies for repeating, but I did speak before about bullet points. So when I used to go to my meetings, when I used to work for the sales companies that I used to be involved in, I found writing bullet points was so important for me. It just gave me a bit more confidence about what I wanted to say in the meetings. I think without them, I would have felt kind of very lost and might have kind of tripped myself up. But just have 2 or 3 bullet points that you want to talk about. Not too much information. You don't want to appear that you're reading off the page though. Remember to breathe. Okay, I mentioned this before, but when you're presenting, when you're in your stand-ups, what have you, slow down. Speak slowly and clearly. Remember to breathe. Very, very important. You know, not least for the fact we need to get the oxygen to the brain as well to make sure that we're thinking at all times. Okay, if we're not doing this, this is bad. Vary in your intonation, especially important in presentations. Okay, we need to be engaged in what we're talking about, and for that, I think we need to vary our intonation. That goes hand in hand with body language as well. Is your body language open? Are you using open gestures? Are we smiling? Are we making eye contact? All very, very important things. And preparation. I'll just link this back to what I said at the start. Remember the phrase, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Okay, so, you know, communication is a lot about preparation. You know, are you practicing? Are you working on your soft skills, filming yourself, listening to your pronunciation, your intonation? What can you improve? This is really, really key. 70 to 90% of communication is non-verbal. That's quite a surprising statistic. So it's actually not what we say often, but how we actually say it. So, you know, you need to, you know, be an engaging communicator if you want to move up in your industry. That, I believe, brings me to the end of what I wanted to say. Does anybody have any questions? You could always turn on your mic now if you wanted to as well, and just maybe ask away. I know we still have a few minutes left, or feel free to just carry on using the chat box. It's up to you guys. No questions, it looks like, at the moment. So everyone understood exactly what I was talking about. That's great. No, that's the thing, you know, this is a work in progress. It takes time. Like, same with your code, soft skills and communication. It's a continual process. It's not an overnight thing. So, you know, like as you do with your code, you know, keep working on your soft skills, keep working on your communication. And if you...
Hello.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, well, actually, I was in the frame, but I had a question about the language barrier.
Yes.
Well, actually, I'm originally from Turkey, and definitely doing presentations in Turkish would be really easy for me. Like, interacting with the people and making presentations wouldn't be hard. But sometimes, like, making a presentation in English or the other language might be a bit different. So what would you do that in that case? Sorry,
Yeah.
it's too long.
What would you say? What's the main challenge, would you say, for you? What do you find hardest about doing presentations in English?
Well, actually, like sometimes instead of saying directly, I'm trying to explain stuff in indirectly way. So
Right.
It should be really definitely better to be doing that stuff indirectly, because sometimes people losing the focus, and sometimes you are not able to share what you really thought. And yeah, that I think that's called the language barrier, right?
Yes. I think I understand what you mean. Yeah. So you're a little bit concerned that your language, you have a language barrier when you're presenting, or maybe your
Yeah.
audience aren't quite resonating with what you're saying. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think this comes a lot back to kind of what I talk about a lot with my software engineers, which is building rapport. So rapport is this emotional connection that we can build with the listener or the other person that we're speaking to. So, you know, again, you know, are we making good small talk? Are we involving our audience? Are we asking them questions? All of the things that I spoke about, are we relaxed? If we're not relaxed ourselves, there's a good chance our audience are also going to feel pretty nervous as well. This is very true in something like maybe like stand-up comedy, for example. If the comedian is very, very nervous, they're gonna the audience actually feels that just as much. It becomes quite an uncomfortable situation. So my advice would be, I understand, I totally understand that you would feel that way, but you know, at the end of the day, I would just bring it back to the preparation again. You know, make sure you're doing everything you can in your power to deliver the best presentation you can. And that comes back to knowing your functional language, knowing your small talk, you know, adopting a growth mindset and that. So does that help?
Well, actually, like this is one of the reasons that I'm using the Dave memes. So it will make it soft atmosphere. So then I feel a bit more comfortable when I'm trying to explain stuff. Yeah, actually, I'm in the train, so like, sorry for the train voice.
That's okay.
So, but definitely, I'm just trying to be a bit more comfortable. And
Yes.
like, to be honest, I just realized that having a bullet points, like
Yeah.
always remember to take a breath. Like this is the most important thing. Like sometimes I'm just feeling like, okay, endless rapper, just going like this, and when I just stop, then I just realizing that I didn't even breathe like a
Yeah.
10 minutes. So yeah, it's to be honest, these bullets are really awesome to me.
Oh, that's great. I'm really pleased. And I know what you mean. When we're nervous and we're anxious, we really find it hard to breathe. It's very, very difficult. So we actually consciously need to tell ourselves and our brain, we need to slow down, try and relax. You know, it's really, as you said, it really probably is the most important thing, I would say. Thank you very much for that question. Does anybody else have any other questions at all before we finish up?
Hi, Tam. Sorry to.
Hi, Max.
I like to improve my question because
Yes.
well I like to organize events something like that because well I'm a JUG member of the Soul Java
Mm.
user group. So today we will have a event today at night, and we will have one English speaker on there, and that probably we will need to switch to the English during the event. So and sometimes I feel that it's hard to work with stars concepts because I
Mm.
saw some people it, actually the beginners instead of to focus on the content that they want to share,
Hmm.
they start to talking about himself. I don't know if it's something, it's a kind of dispositive, that device that they use to control, how can I say, the
Right.
nervous in a sense. So um uh, uh, well I'd like to ask you if
Yes.
when you are talking, when you are presenting, uh, for example, in Brazil, we used to put some jokes during
Mm.
the presentation
Yeah.
because it helped us to breaking the nerves during the presentation, and to make it more enjoyable to the people. But I don't know if it's good to put jokes between
Definitely,
the
Max.
presentation, just to help the people, because I saw that it's hard to work on this kind of way. How can I say? Oh, I show a situation. I
Yeah.
do the task. I do the action that I did, and I show up the results. Sometimes it's kind of this is structure.
Yeah.
It's hard to follow it when you are beginning on a speaker.
Definitely.
So and my question is good enough to put this kind of personality in a presentation, because sometimes I saw that, oh God, I don't know if I'm doing those things great.
Hmm.
And of course
Yeah.
the feedback help us to involve it. So but uh, how can I help myself during the presentation in order to avoid to just to junking, or just to stopping by side.
Yeah.
Maybe practice is the word. Am I right?
What was the word? Sorry, Max.
Maybe the practice is the word that I'm finding now.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Am I
I
right?
think so. I think the thing is, Max, is you need to find the right balance. Okay, finding the
Okay.
balance. So I really liked what you said before about telling some jokes. So jokes are really important, or at least showing your sense of humor in a presentation. We don't want to come across as too serious and too stiff. Okay, because I think that kind of turns some people off. If you can tell some jokes, confident enough to tell some jokes, that makes you seem like a really confident presenter as well. And again, if you're a good joke teller, you're probably a good storyteller as well. So I would say work on your jokes. Um, Make sure that they're appropriate jokes, of course. But
Sure.
I would definitely say there's definitely a place for them in a presentation, and a sense of humor is definitely important. When I'm with my students in our lessons, I like to have a few jokes just to kind of lighten the mood. It's very important, Max. Good question. Good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for my struggling.
No,
Thanks
it's
to
okay.
solve my struggling.
No. You're fine. You're absolutely fine. I think that's everything. Hannah, did you want to say anything at all, Hannah, at all, or are we all good?
I think we're all good. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And thank you, Tom, for a great session. And yeah, we'll send on the recording afterwards. And for anybody who doesn't know, this was an Accrue sponsored session, and Accrue is a live learning platform for software engineers to work on everything from your English to presenting to giving feedback and all of those soft skills in between, but also career development skills like interviewing skills, and CV help and career coaching. So basically everything you need for your career is what Accrue tries to offer. So thank you everyone for coming for this pilot session. And again, thank you, Tom, on a great session.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh,
And
great.
see you next time.